Hello YouTube viewers and welcome to the History Enigma. What kind of mind could hide behind a mask of charm and good looks, only to reveal itself as one of the most notorious serial killers in history? How did Ted Bundy, a seemingly ordinary man, commit such unimaginable horrors? Today we delve into the dark world of Ted Bundy, uncover the chilling details of his gruesome crimes and the twisted psyche that drove him. What made Bundy such a deadly predator, and how did he elude capture for so long? Brace yourself as we explore the terrifying legacy of a man who left an indelible mark on the world of true crime. Ted Bundy, originally named Theodore Robert Cowell, born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. His early life was marked by secrecy and shame. Born out of wedlock, Ted's arrival was a source of deep humiliation for his mother's devout parents. His mother, Elena Louise Cowell, known simply as Louise, was just 22 when she gave birth to him in a home for unwed mothers. Not long after, Louise took Ted to her parents' home in Philadelphia, seeking a semblance of normalcy against the stigma. Ted's birth certificate labels his father as unknown, leaving his true parentage a mystery. Speculations abound, though. Anne Rule, who worked with Ted and wrote The Strange Beside Me, theorized that Lloyd Marshall, an Air Force veteran and Penn State alumni, could be his father. Other sources named Jack Worthington, while some even whispered that Ted's grandfather might have been his biological father, an effort to mask his illegitimacy. Ted was raised as his grandparents' adopted son, believing his mother was his sister. Eventually, Louise moved to Tacoma, Washington with young Ted. In 1951, she married Johnny Bundy. Ted adopted his name. He reportedly held little respect for the stepfather, viewing him as uneducated and to working class. Despite this, Johnny and Louise had several children together, expanding the family. On the surface, Ted Bundy seemed to have a typical upbringing in a working-class family. Yet even as a young child, he displayed a disturbing curiosity about the macabre. At just 3 years old, he developed a fascination with knives. Though shy, Bundy was intelligent and excelled academically, but he struggled socially. Matthew Lizzie, a criminologist at the Iowa State University, and author of the 2023 book Ted Bundy and the Unsolved Murder Epidemic, notes that Bundy exhibited cruel behaviors early on. He dissected mice in the woods and attempted to drown people while swimming or boating, all without any hint of remorse, guilt, or shame. As he entered his teenage years, Bundy's sinister tendencies grew. He took to peering through windows and had no qualms about stealing whatever caught his eye. This darker side of his personality began to overshadow the seemingly ordinary boy his family and teachers knew and educated. In 1972, Ted Bundy earned his psychology degree from the University of Washington. Afterward, he attended law school in Utah, but never finished. During his time at the University of Washington, Bundy fell for Diane Edwards, a beautiful, wealthy young woman from California. She had everything he desired: money, class, and influence. The breakup left him devastated, and it seemed to leave a lasting mark. Many of his later victims bore a striking resemblance to Diane, attractive students with long, dark hair. By the mid-1970s, Bundy had undergone a transformation. He became more outwardly confident, engaging actively in social and political spheres. His charm and newfound poise even earned him a letter of recommendation from the Republican governor of Washington, whom he had supported a campaign. Ted Bundy admitted to killing 30 women in various states during the 1970s. Many experts believe the real number might be closer to 100 or more. For years, he insisted on his innocence, but before his execution, he finally confessed. Former FBI agent Bill Hagmaier, who spent significant time with Bundy after his capture, remarked, "It all felt like a ploy to extend his life." In 1974, Jorgen Hopkins was a student at the University of Washington and a member of the Kappa Alpha Beta sorority. On June 10th, a night began like any other. Hopkins visited her boyfriend, walking just 6 houses down from her sorority room. Her roommate grew worried when Hopkins didn't return by 2 a.m. After calling her boyfriend and learning she had left at 1 a.m., they contacted the police, who acted swiftly due to the alarming number of recent disappearances in the area. Before execution in 1989, Ted Bundy confessed to killing Jorgen Hopkins. He described how he faked an injury, using crutches and dropping his books near her. When Hawkins offered to help, he lured her to his car. Bundy often targeted women with long hair parted down the middle, or those who seemed gentle and kind, making them easier to deceive. As Hopkins leaned into the car to place the books in the car, Bundy struck her with a crowbar until she was unconscious, then handcuffed and restrained with strips of sheet and leather. In the forest, Bundy raped her multiple times, both while she was conscious and unconscious, eventually choking out to death. He then left a body in the woods, but returned several times to engage in necrophilia until the corpse decompose or animals have fed on it. Bundy wasn't charged with Hopkins' murder, as he admitted to it, just before his execution in 1989. On July 14, 1974, Janice Ott was enjoying the sunny day at Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. Her peaceful afternoon turned tragic when Ted Bundy, wearing an arm sling, approached her. He asked for help tying his boat to his car. As she agreed and walked with him, he struck her with an iron pipe, knocking her unconscious. Bundy handcuffed and restrained her, then drove her to a secluded area in the Seattle woods. He repeatedly raped and abused her, ultimately strangling her to death. He continued to violate her corpse, returning several times until it decayed like Jorgen Hopkins. Janice Ott's murder went uncharged until Bundy confessed shortly before his execution in 1989. Ted Bundy's crimes were marked by a terrifying consistency. He would typically assault his victims before taking their lives in a brutal attack. Each victim fell prey to the identical ruse, meeting a grim fate. Afterward, he transported the bodies to remote wooded areas, leaving them there to decompose. Disturbingly, Bundy revisited the site, subjecting the remains to further desecration until decay rendered it impossible. This chilling routine was repeated with each of his victims, leaving a trail of horror in its wake. There is a lot of debate about when Ted Bundy began his killing spree. Most sources suggested it started around 1974, a time when many women vanished from Seattle and nearby Oregon. Rumors spread about a young dark-haired man named Ted being the last person seen with some of the victims. However, criminologist Matt DeLisi, in his 2023 book, argues that Bundy likely murdered over 100 people and began his lethal activities in his teenager years. Bundy drops a lot of clues that there were way more murders. Tillis notes, law enforcement back then was ill-prepared to track Bundy movements. He believes the rapid pace and growing confidence in Bundy killing from 1974 to 1978 suggests he couldn't have just started then. The true number of Bundy victims remains unknown. Shrouded in mystery and Elizabeth Klopfer, Ted Bundy's girlfriend, one of Ted Bundy's most famous girlfriends, Elizabeth Klopfer eventually played a crucial role in his arrest. They met in 1969 at a Seattle bar and began a relationship that lasted 6 years, a single mom with a young daughter. Klopfer struggled with alcoholism. Bundy stepped in, offering support and affection, making her feel he was warm and loving. However, by 1974, Klopfer's suspicions about Bundy began to grow. Odd behaviors like finding a meat cleaver in his desk raised red flags. When she confronted him, Bundy's charm came into play, skillfully deflecting her concerns and keeping his dark secrets hidden. Klopfer, harboring suspicions about Bundy's role in local murders, went to the police. However, they dismissed the concerns, unable to see him as the culprit. Despite this, they stayed together, though their relationship grew strained when Bundy moved to Olympia the next year in 1975. Klopfer approached the police once more, this time armed with evidence that led to Bundy's arrest. From his prison cell, Bundy admitted over the phone that he had attempted to kill her and couldn't control his vent urges when his sickness overwhelming him. She stated that conversation marked the end of the relationship. Klopfer cut all ties and eventually wrote a book detailing her harrowing experience with the infamous serial killer. In the fall of 1974, Ted Bundy relocated to Utah to attend law school. Almost immediately, women in the area started to disappear. The following year, a routine traffic stop turned into a significant break for law enforcement. Inside Bundy's car, they found an array of burglary tools, crowbar, face mask rope, and handcuffs. This discovery led to his arrest for possessing these items, and police began to suspect him of far darker deeds. In 1975, Bundy was arrested again, this time for the kidnapping of Carol DeRonch, one of the few women who managed to escape his grasp. Convicted of the crime, he received a prison sentence ranging from 1 to 15 years, marking the beginning of his unraveling in the eyes of the law. In 1977, Ted Bundy managed to escape from prison twice. The first time while facing murder charges for a young woman in Colorado. He decided to represent himself in court, seizing an opportunity during a trip to the courthouse library. He jumped out of the window and fled. He was recaptured 8 days later. In December, Bundy pulled off another daring escape. He had lost more than 30 pounds to squeeze through a small hole he had made in the ceiling of his cell. Authorities didn't realize he was gone for 15 hours, giving him a significant head start. This delay allowed Bundy to once again vanish, putting the police in a frantic race to find the elusive serial killer. Ted Bundy made his way to Tallahassee, Florida, on January 14, 1978. He broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. In a horrifying attack, he assaulted 4 young women, killing 2, Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy. Less than a month later, on February 9th, Bundy kidnapped and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. These heinous acts marked the end of his killing spree. He was pulled over by the police later that month, leading to his final capture. The most incriminating evidence tying Bundy to the Chi Omega murders was the bite marks found on Lisa Levy's body, which matched his dental impressions perfectly during this tumultuous period. Bundy's mother, Louise, worked as a secretary at the University of Puget Sound. For years, she refused to believe the accusations against her son, maintaining his innocence until his eventual confession, trial, and conviction shattered her denial. Ted Bundy's good looks, charm, and intelligence turned him into something of a celebrity during his trial. He fiercely fought for his life. But in July 1979, he was convicted for the murders of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, receiving the death penalty twice. Bundy spent 9 years on death row, constantly appealing his sentence. In 1980, he faced another death sentence for Kimberly Leach's murder, sealing his fate. This sentence ultimately led to his execution by electric chair in 1989. Despite his efforts to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, Ted Bundy was denied, and in a desperate attempt to avoid execution, he offered information on other unsolved murders, hoping for leniency. Yet his strategies failed, and he couldn't delay his end forever. Bundy's process was disturbingly consistent. He would fake an injury, tricking women into helping him at his car. Once close to his car, he would knock them unconscious with an iron pipe and proceeded to rape them. Afterward, he would drive them far from the scene, usually to a secluded forest, where he would assault them again. Finally, he'd suffocate them and hide their bodies deep in the woods. His victims shared common traits. They were white middle-class females aged 15 to 25, many of whom were college students. This chilling consistency in his approach and choice of victims highlights the calculated nature of his crimes. Bundy's ability to manipulate and brutal methods made him one of the most notorious serial killers in history. His desperate attempts to escape justice only prolonged the inevitable, ending with his execution. Ted Bundy derived a twisted satisfaction from killing, relishing in the act of striking with a pipe or strangling his victims. He once chillingly remarked, "When I kill a woman and gaze into her eyes as she dies, it's like being God." This godlike feeling was an addiction for Bundy, driving him to claim victim after victim. Rhonda Stapley, a survivor, recounted how Bundy seemed to enjoy watching her suffer, repeatedly choking her unconsciousness, only to revive her and do it again. In February 1980, Ted Bundy married Carol Ann Boone, a mother of 2 he had dated before his initial arrest. The wedding took place in a courtroom during the penalty phase of his trial. Bundy proposed, Boone accepted, and in the presence of the judge that marriage became official under Florida law. They had first met 6 years earlier, while working at the Department of Emergency Services in Olympia, Washington. In 1982, Bond gave birth to a daughter named Rose, listing Bundy as the father. There was some skepticism about his paternity since he wasn't allowed conjugal visits in prison. However, Ann Rule, Bundy's former co-worker and author of a book about him, suggested that Bundy might have bribed prison guards to allow them to have private moments together. Boone eventually came to terms with Bundy's guilt in South Florida without a public ceremony. Before his execution, Bundy requested his ashes scattered in the Cascade Mountains of Washington state, the site where he had murdered at least 4 of his victims. Ted Bundy's crime centered on his insatiable need for sexual pleasure. He kidnapped, raped, and killed at least 35 women, driven, driven by hypersexuality and twisted fantasies. Bundy's idea of satisfaction involved torturing and terrorizing women, fueled by addiction to violent pornography. He admitted to enjoying hardcore scenes of abduction and rape, escalating from watching to committing these heinous acts. Ultimately, Bundy even engaged in necrophilia to fulfill his dark desires. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, enjoy another one of our YouTube videos and please subscribe.